Meeting Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness to order. Jamie, please call the roll.
Chairman Solomon.
Here.
Representative Borowski. Designation. Representative Brown. Designation. Representative Doherty.
Here.
Representative Genst.
Here.
Representative Haddock. Designation. Representative Ingalls.
Here.
Representative Monroe. Designation. Representative O'Mara. Designation. Representative Pielli. Designation. Representative Sappi.
Here.
Representative Scott.
Here.
Representative Takak. Designation. Representative Webster.
Here.
Chairman Gillen.
Here.
Representative Banta.
Here.
Representative Bashline.
Here.
Representative Cooper.
Here.
Representative Ham.
Designation.
Representative Kerwin.
Designation.
Representative Krupa.
Here.
Representative Major.
Here.
Representative Rigby.
Here.
Representative Stender.
Here.
Representative Wattrow.
Designation.
Representative Williams. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Jamie. I will call up our first item of business, Senate Bill 90, authored by Senator Mastriano. Mike with an explanation.
Senate Bill 90 from Senator Mastriano provides for modular testing for Firefighter 1 certification and makes technical changes to annual reporting requirements.
Any questions or comments on the bill? Representative Stender.
Chairman and staff, I appreciate bringing this piece of legislation up. I think one of the biggest challenges that a lot of our volunteer firefighters have is typically at the end to take your Firefighter 1 certification. It's actually a separate course, a 100-question test, followed by some skills sections. And I know one of the complaints that I've always heard in the fire services, a lot of members believe that with the opportunity to take smaller tests at the end of each of the 4 modules, they feel like they would either be more successful or, more importantly, more willing to take the professional certification test. So I really appreciate this, and I think this is a piece of legislation that will really help volunteer fire service as a whole. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Stender. Are there any others before I get to Chairman Gillen? Yes. Representative Scott.
I'm really excited to vote on this legislation. I've gone to fire school twice. The first time when I was 16, it was exterior and interior. There were the only 2 components. Did it again a couple years ago, and there are 4 modules, very intensive modules. I know that a lot of folks in my class the second time around would really benefit from this. And then also, it also gives the opportunity for young volunteer firefighters to take a break in between training, right? The training is so long, over a calendar period rather. So if you can break it up and give them an opportunity to come back, sometimes life happens. You know, you have a baby in the middle of the summer, you want to spend more time with your kid, right? And you'll pick back up at the next module. This will give them the opportunity and the freedom to do that. I think this is a win in the right direction to make sure that more Pennsylvanians are safe and more people have access to quality training. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Scott. Chairman Gillen.
I would add my weigh in with my colleagues and support for this particular piece of legislation. State College, the Fire Commissioner's Office, I recall, weighed in on this. I think subsequently have anything to say regarding legislation?
They have not.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Gillen. Are there any negative votes? Senate Bill 90 is moved to the floor unanimously for consideration. I will call up our next item of business, Senate Bill 95, authored by Senator Phillips Hill. Mike with an explanation.
Senate Bill 95 from Senator Phillips Hill permits EMS providers to distribute naloxone to a caregiver of a patient that is overdosed and requires certain cost disclosures and insurance exchange information to be provided to prescription drug patients.
Thank you, Mike. Are there any comments or questions on the bill? Chairman Gillen.
Yeah, I'm certainly supportive of the underlying. I apologize for my voice. Got to bed real early this morning after a New York trip to the airport with some friends. I'm supportive of the underlying concept that exists in the bill. Further in the legislation, begins to deal with pharmacies, prescriptions, state board of pharmacy, including a penalty section for a lack of posting, deals with health insurers. And so somewhere down the line, I think it might be a better fit for whether it's the insurance committee or the health committee, human services, I realize where we're at in the calendar. So I'm supporting moving this down the assembly line. I would hope that the way this is packaged and where it ends up committee-wise perhaps in the future would be a little bit in contrast to what we're experiencing today, but I do understand why it's occurring. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Chairman Gillen, really important points. We're going to be moving an amendment, which I think you'll look favorably upon, which touch upon some of the issues that you brought up. Representative Scott.
So just from a practical standpoint, a couple things. One, the liability. I know in the analysis it did talk about that the provider's not going to incur any liability for not stocking the actual prescription. What I found is that sometimes these things, the expiration dates, all this kind of stuff, what about the liabilities with respect to that? Do we have any idea? Is there a blanket sentence in here that the EMS provider and the EMS company will not incur any liability for dispensing, giving out a dose that is expired or,
If you're page 3, line 16, the EMS provider shall not incur any liability for not stocking the dose package or not dispensing the dose package to the family member, friend, or other individual.
Yeah, but that's for not giving it to them and not stocking it. What if you give one, right? You give the dose, you give it to them, and the dose is not operable, right? And the other thing is it talks about one dose. The stuff that's on the streets now, very rarely are you bringing somebody back with a shot, right? Like this is a multiple process naloxone. So you're giving them one in each nostril. You're going to have to do it again, most likely, with the stuff that's on the street now, at least from a practical standpoint. So
the legislation does not contemplate other liability issues beyond the black letter of the provision I just mentioned.
Got it. Because what I don't want is for the reverse to happen, is for us to get it, and then we give it to a family, they use it, and they get one dose, because the legislation calls for one dose. That one dose doesn't bring them back, and then all of a sudden they're saying, hey, the EMTs gave this to me, this is not being effective. So like that false advertisement, that false sense of hope.
On the dosing point, we are going to be doing an amendment on that too. Mike's going to speak to that.
Sure, we've been working with Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs, Department of Health, Department of Insurance, Department of State to make sure that we're locking this all down and make sure that it comports with the standing order, which does allow for 2 doses to be distributed as a single package, and we think that the language is going to cover that.
Got it. Thank you.
Since we did open it back up after Chairman Gillen to Representative Scott, do others have any comments or questions?
Well, I really think this belongs in the Health Committee.
Representative Gent says this really belongs in the Health Committee. Are there any other comments or questions? Representative Stender.
To Representative Scott's point, I would just hope that any changes still allow EMS providers to fall under the security they already have under the EMS Act of gross negligence. So with that in mind, I agree with what Representative Scott says, and just to make sure that it still allows providers that they have to be held to be found to be grossly negligent, not just, regular negligence.
Thank you, Representative Stender, and we're joined also by Representative PLA online. Other comments or questions? Are there any negative votes? Senate Bill 95 moves unanimously to the floor for consideration. Our final item of business, I will call up Senate Bill 466, authored by Senator Brooks. Mike with an explanation.
Senate Bill 466 by Senator Brooks allows individuals who are required as a condition of their employment to receive fire suppression training to have that training considered by the State Fire Commissioner toward their hours of training required for Firefighter 1 certification, requires certain reports of PEMA, and codifies certain portions of the Fire Company and EMS grant program out of the fiscal code and back into Title 35.
Thank you, Mike. Are there any comments or questions? Representative Stender.
Do we know the reports that they're asking for from PEMA, some of those grant programs? Do we know from PEMA how often some of those programs, are functioning? Is that, some? It just seems like some of those programs we don't see very often, or I'm not sure if that is a revenue source that PEMA typically taps from. I'm just curious.
We will ask PEMA and get back to you on that. You want to text Wes? Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Chairman Gillen.
I like the idea. It moves us faster to firefighter one certification. I like the streamlining aspects of the bill, and I wholeheartedly support it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Gillen. Are there any negative votes on Senate Bill 466? Seeing none, Senate Bill 466 moves unanimously to the floor for consideration. Is there any other business to bring before the committee? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.